All right, my next guest, Matt Hertz, one of the sharpest guys I know in the fulfillment, logistics, and e-com space. You know, it's funny. I have so many friends like you who are experts in certain industries, and I have great text chains going on, different subjects. I have a friend in healthcare tech, another one in finance, and I said, let's bring it to the audience, like real subject matter experts, and literally some of these conversations are conversations that you and I are having via text. So, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, Dan. Good to be here. Excited to chat with you.
Awesome, man. A big thing on my mind, and I really don't even understand it, is sort of social commerce, but specifically around uh, TikTok. I had no idea until a couple months ago how big of a player they are. Tell me about just social commerce and TikTok and how they're doing it.
Yeah, Dan, you know me well enough to know I'm not the marketing guru in the room. I'm sure you have an expert who is that marketing and social guru, but certainly from an e-commerce perspective, TikTok is really starting to emerge as a serious competitor or option in the market. And when I say competitor, I mean relative to Amazon and some of the other platforms out there. We're actually working with a beauty brand right now at the moment, helping them find different fulfillment options, and their business has really accelerated just in the last 3 to 4 months because of TikTok. It was a fantastic business before, selling on primarily Shopify, but they just started opening TikTok or enabling TikTok in the last few months, and their business has, I think it was like it's tripled, like literally tripled in the last 3 or 4 months, as a result of it. And it's been really fascinating to see just like the demographic between, traditional marketplaces like Amazon and even Shopify, how that demo skews a little bit older relative
Yeah.
to TikTok consumers who are, Gen Z and folks in their early 20s and even teens.
It's crazy. It's this video, and then all the system, whether it's IG or TikTok, they're recommending videos. And I got to tell you, in the last couple months, I have found myself buying more from honestly like influencers, like guys in the nutrition space or what have you. And it's being driven by them, not by celebrity endorsements. And it's just folks that it is really the influencer community and again, we'll call it social commerce space is fascinating to me and how quickly it's grown.
Yeah, there's a lot of trust that's built by, if you let's just take podcasts for example, like this. Um, there's certain podcasts where occasionally I'll listen to, let's say, like the Andrew Huberman podcast, and I listen
I
to
love
that
them.
with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah,
Because some of it is a little dramatic.
of course.
Um, there's very often I get 60 minutes in the morning when I wake up to see some sunshine and just stare at it, but not stare at it too closely. But if
All
it's
you
after
see is like
7 a.m.,
middle-aged
then
guys looking at the
it's
sun.
this. Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. And if you live, east of the, Mississippi, you got to look at it a little bit differently. So,
Yeah,
you just have to try your best. But the point is that they have, I know Athletic Greens is a big, or AG1 as they're now known as, is a big advertiser on the Huberman podcast. And I think I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast as well, and Athletic Greens is there too. And like for a moment, months ago, I was like, how did AG1 become so big so quickly?
yeah,
And there's probably a culmination of a lot of different things that went their way, and it took them time. But like you think about how they promote themselves on these very sticky and influential podcasts, where those who listen to Joe Rogan do everything that he says to
yeah,
do and don't do anything that he says not to do, right?
right.
And like Andrew Huberman, if this person who a lot of people respect say do a certain thing or try, consume something, you're going to do that. So I think aligning yourself with it's almost like listening to what your doctor tells you to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of loyalty there.
It's funny. I drink AG1 every morning, but I totally
That
agree.
does my
Like
wife. Yeah.
yeah, and it's great, but you're 100% correct. You're going to see, and I think you're going to see in this election as well. Not to jump into politics, but like just the mainstream media being broken, these fragmented, independent news sources or influencers really driving a lot of influence more than I think people. I think people are underestimating it, but it's pretty wild. The other question I had for you, and we were going back and forth until the Super Bowl, I had no idea who TEMU was. Right, this Chinese uh, marketplace where you can order stuff inexpensively, and then it's shipped from China. But they have a unique business model. Am I correct?
Temu's taken advantage of a really interesting, I'll call it a loophole, but loophole kind of insinuates certain pejoratives, which, anyways, call it what it is. But there's essentially a rule where, as an importer, as a consumer in the United States, you can receive goods that are produced or manufactured in other countries, so long as it's under $800, the value of the goods, you don't pay a tax. As the shipper of record in, let's say, China or in Canada, as well as the importer. So it's essentially like an arbitrage or a loophole. So what companies like TEMU and Shein, SHEIN, Wish.com, which was founded a handful of years ago, what they've essentially done is saying, okay, well, because product is so inexpensive overseas in China, we can basically sell to U.S. customers, not pay any, duties or tariffs, and the end consumer doesn't pay any, because most e-commerce orders, as we know, are under $800. Right? There's a very small percentage of orders that you receive direct to consumer, via the postal service or UPS, that are in excess of $800. iPhones and other high-end electronics, but most are under. So they're able to take advantage of this loophole by foregoing paying tariffs. And what they do is, logistically, they're typically, because they're generating so many packages, so much volume, they're able to essentially charter air freighters or flights every night or every couple of days from China to get to the U.S., typically the West Coast entry points. And then in the West Coast, it's then inducted locally into the U.S. Postal Service. Mm-hmm. So when it gets to you as the consumer, it kind of looks like a shipment that originated in the United States. It's got, that same USPS tracking number that everyone's used to. And the transit time can be actually really quite fast. From the moment you order it to the moment it's delivered, it might only take, 4 or 5 or 6 days, because they're taking advantage of an air freight network to get it to the US, and then it's, being injected locally. So it's really a smart network. The issue is that it's pissing off the Amazons of the world, and other, Shopify merchants and other merchants who are just not able to compete with, the low cost of sourcing from overseas. And I think obviously the benefit of Amazon is they're able to get you product same day or 1 day or 2 days, which some of these Chinese marketplaces are not able to do just yet.
But if you're willing to wait, you can get some real good bargains. And I know my wife has ordered from some of these sites. Man, it's a couple of days. You're right. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's not for everything, right? Like if you realize that you've run out of diapers for your baby, you're probably, I don't know too many moms and dads who want to buy diapers from China, among other kind of hygiene products, right? Although it's probably all made there anyways, but we don't have to tell them that. But yeah, for other kind of novelties, tchotchkes, you find some. You see some sweater that are, a pair of, boxers or, socks that you don't need in a bind that, cost you $6 for 6 pairs of socks, all in, including shipping and everything. You're like, well, even if it doesn't get here at all, like it's only $6 down the drain. And if it gets here, that's kind of like a bonus. And if it gets here in 5 or 6 days, I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing, right? I'm going to keep ordering.
Do you think Amazon uses its political muscle to? I mean, nobody's in the corner of China. So in both scenarios that we just talked about, TikTok, you got regulators hammering away because they really don't have any representation here, and then you got these guys, and you have Amazon, who has, I'm sure, a group of lobbyists in DC kicking and screaming and calling.
Yeah, I'm sure Amazon is hating this, and yeah, I have to believe that they have lobbyists fighting against lowering that $800 de minimis. And by the way, that is the highest, and like it kind of sounds, it's like jumbo shrimp, right? Like it's the highest de minimis, right? Like de minimis by definition means like small amount, right? Or like, unworthy, like an unworthy amount, an immaterial amount. And like $800 is material, right? Like I'd love to look at this data, but I would imagine that 90+% of e-commerce orders in the United States are under $800. So
Yeah.
it's basically saying that you can import anything from overseas without paying tax on, and that's not good for the United States, and certainly not good for Amazon.
Let's keep it overseas. The Houthis, right? All you hear in, if I'm pronouncing it right, but all you hear in the news is, them hijacking ships, causing trouble. How much of an impact is it today to the global supply chain? Is it are we making a big deal about it, or is it really painful for what you're seeing out there?
Yeah, it seems like there's, whether it's, the Houthis, or the next version of that comes up. I
Right.
mean, there seems to be always something.
Yeah.
Obviously there was that big something a few years ago with COVID and how disruptive that was to supply chains, and it probably continues to be, some headwinds, as a result. But there's always something, and I think uh, that unpredictability is really, you study, from an academic perspective, you're sort of taught in operations that, like, everything needs to be orderly, and this is the process, and this is the plan. But you're never taught what to do when something disrupts that plan, right?
Mm.
Like there's never, like, there isn't this concept of like defense in supply chain. It's always like how to do how to eliminate the fat, how to do things when the trains are running on time. What does it look like when the trains are on time? And logistics, and I mean, I use what I'm about to say a lot when it comes to fulfillment, where like fulfillment is the business of exceptions management. I think logistics broadly is the business of exceptions management. So
Yeah.
what makes brands great, or operators great, are those that can really triage and know how to react when the trains aren't running on time 1 or 3 or 5% of the time. Like, who
Yeah.
cares that 95 or 97% of the time things are going well, right? Like, that's great. That's what you're paid to do. But like when, the Houthis attack, or when, whatever that ship was that got stuck in, where was it, like in the Panama Canal, or,
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it wasn't there, but it was, I can't think of it now. And it was, lodged for, I think it was a couple weeks now. I mean, memory escapes me, but uh, there's always something that comes up. And I think what's really, I think it's events like that then immediately after, there's kind of this like push towards like insourcing, right? Like
Yeah.
keeping things at home, keeping things domestic, or, at worst, having providers in Mexico or in Canada, or kind of more locally, even in Europe, where you don't have to have the same amount of need to, import.
It shows how fragile we are from a supply chain. You saw it during COVID, right? And then obviously the CHIPS Act is a big reason why, we have to sort of decouple a little bit from Taiwan, because any disruption to that supply chain, man, our economy goes in the crapper. So, speaking of Wall Street, ShipBob announced that they are on their roadshow for an IPO. Thoughts? What kind of pricing do they get? What kind of is the market going to scream and shout and get excited about it, or is it going to be just a big yawn?
Yeah, I think I was reading similar sentiment the other day. It sounds like, management has been telling the company that, I think they were targeting 2025. So,
Mm.
the next 12 months to be public. That's been their goal for last couple of years, according to sources in those articles. Look, on the one hand, like, I hope that they get exactly what they want. I hope they get more than what they want.
Of
I
course.
think the article I was reading said that they're targeting a $4 billion, with a B, a $4 billion valuation. In that
Wow.
same article, it said that last year's revenue was $500 million, which is great. I mean, 500 million in revenue is a lot of revenue, right?
A lot of revenue.
Uh, but an 8 times revenue, right,
Yeah.
to be valued at 4 billion, that would be 8 times top line. Is just not something that any 3PL in the history of the world has ever, attracted at that
Yeah.
scale, right? Maybe there was $100,000 a year 3PL that just signed a big customer, and now they're being, but I know, Dan, I mean, you have experience selling a 3PL to a bigger company, and yeah, I mean, maybe you got eight times, but I don't think
I,
so.
I wish I wouldn't be doing a podcast right now.
Well, I was gonna say you would have paid me more to be on this
I
podcast if
would
you did.
pay more.
Uh,
But so speaking of, I mean, look, there's two, specifically one, Shopify, and then Shopify, who's done fantastic, right? They've blown up. My only regret is that I didn't buy the stock, but they've done fantastic. They've built a fantastic business, but they've done a deal with Flexport to provide fulfillment services. Walk me through that deal, and how do you think it's going to work out?
Yeah, well, the business so there's kind of like a legacy there, without getting too much in the weeds. I mean, basically, what happened was Shopify had started doing fulfillment themselves. They basically created what's known as a 4PL, where they don't actually own the warehousing, but they have relationships with a bunch
Right.
of warehouses or 3PLs, and they basically own the account management, the invoicing, the IT, the tech, and a few other aspects of that. Long story short, for Shopify to accelerate, they bought a company called Deliver. They then, about a year later, sold Deliver to, which was basically Shopify Fulfillment Network,
Mhm.
SFN as they called it. They sold that business to Flexport. This is now probably about a year ago, maybe 8 months ago, but recently. So Shopify owned Deliver for a year, and then sold it about a year ago. Now Flexport has bought what was once known as SFN, the Shopify Fulfillment Network. Flexport, most of us are familiar with as essentially a freight forwarder, a freight broker. They have really great technology. I mean, honestly, it's the best, visibility that I've seen in the market in terms of, SMB shippers and even enterprise shippers being able to, understand where their containers are when they're, coming inbound to the U.S. from anywhere else. And Flexport had this vision of creating what they call like from port to porch. So
Mhm.
from port being like from Shenzhen or somewhere in China or overseas, to porch being the consumer's door. So they want to create this experience for shippers, for Dan's candle company or for Matt's, peanut butter company, to be able to get a container from Shenzhen, have that product arrive at the customer's door, and have it all seamless. Have one vendor that you communicate with, that you work with. It sounds really great in theory. It's really hard to execute on because, in that flow, there's so many disparate pieces
Yeah.
of the supply chain that need to work well together. And that's really difficult. So Flexport is now building out their kind of version of, SFN, of Shopify's fulfillment network. They've been kind of tight-lipped in terms of what that actually looks like. I've heard that they've essentially booted off a lot of the 3PLs that were once part of the Deliver network or the Shopify network. I think at their peak, they had about 50 different 3PLs that all had a share of their respective capacities part of this network. And now they're down to just a handful. And in lieu of that, they're building their own warehouses. So Flexport's becoming more of a 3PL, like an asset-based entity, unless so this kind of digital or 4PL model, which I absolutely think is the right strategy. I have a lot of qualms with the 4PL model in general. There's typically too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yep.
There's that kind of broker model just doesn't work well when information is so is required in such real time. So I'm now told that Flexport has at least a small handful of their own facilities that they're now pushing Shopify merchants towards, like through their relationships and partnerships with Shopify. They're saying, hey, we have buildings that handle e-commerce fulfillment. Use Shopify, send us merchants who need e-commerce fulfillment, which is many of them, a large
Yeah.
subset of them, and throw them in our buildings where we can actually support them with this fulfillment. So it all sounds good in theory. I think my challenge with that is, as you know, Dan, with your background in fulfillment, very rarely is there a building that can support everything,
100%.
right? It's like
Yeah.
saying like every kid should go to the same college, right? Or like, Dan, if you have 5 kids, which I know you don't, but if you had 5 kids, it's like and they're all different ages with different personalities. Like, I think they should all go to University of Miami or
Right.
UF, right? It's like,
Right.
no, right? Like maybe they all do,
Yeah.
but like they're all, I mean, maybe some don't go to college, and maybe some want to go to college out of state, and some want to go to a liberal arts college. Probably not, knowing you, but you know what I'm saying. Um, so like everyone's a little bit different, and to say like everyone go into this one building, whether you're shipping, outdoor sporting goods, or if you're shipping alcohol, or if you're shipping, makeup brushes, it just doesn't make sense, right? There's a
Yeah.
reason why there's so many 3PLs, because everyone's focused on a slightly different aspect of the market.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, and that we did 4PL work, and this was the problem, right? The technology platform would own the relationship. The lines of communication were bad customer experience from the client standpoint, because they're like, "Who's my end client?" And you're right, the fulfillment business, specifically, if you get into the direct to consumer business, it's all exceptions, it's nuance and everything, and so I've always saw that whenever big warehouse guys or guys who were in the fulfillment business of, B2B, and then they get into the direct to consumer business, they would fumble right away, and then they'd hate it and exit. So that was usually my opportunity to pounce and pick up clients. It's a crazy business. But what do you think the future of direct to consumer subscription box? And let me take a step back of how we know each other, because you were the head honcho of logistics and operations for Birchbox, a pioneer, really the first big brand, subscription box space. We did a ton of subscription box business. It had its wonderful heyday. Where do you see that business going over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer to that question hasn't really wavered much in the last few years. I wish I would have known this back in 2010. Well, I shouldn't say that, because it was a great experience when I joined Birchbox in 2010. I mean, as you said, we were, and I don't mean to sound overly egotistical. It's more truth, but like we were really the pioneers in subscription
Yeah,
commerce. I
absolutely.
mean, there was Harry and David, and Columbia Records and other kind of
Yeah,
subscription models, but those are kind of, pre, I mean, that was kind of, pre-dot-com
yeah,
bubble bursting. But yeah, Birchbox was really the kind, we really broke down a bunch of walls and sort of democratized,
yeah,
made it so easy to basically pop anything in a box and send it to a user base at a predetermined cadence. The challenge that model faced, or Birchbox specifically, but broadly, and kind of the inverse of that, is like, what makes a good subscription box company? The answer I've been giving for a few years is going to sound really elementary, but it's worth saying. I think the businesses that I've seen have most success in subscription are those that you truly need, or products that you truly need on a subscription basis.
right.
Birchbox was a great business. I'm so thankful to have spent a few years at the company, and some of my ex-colleagues are, to this day, among my best friends. But you don't need a box of makeup samples sent to you every month.
Right.
And despite the low price point, we only charge $10, and we can talk about the financials and why that was a hard. When you're only making $10, not much margin in there. But the point is that, like, it wasn't that it was too expensive for consumers. It just created clutter, right? It was
Yeah,
like,
correct.
it's like when I get like 8 magazines a month. Like, most of them are free. I don't even know how I'm subscribed to these magazines, but it's not like, just stop sending them to me, because it's
Right.
just too much, right? It's just too
Yeah.
much clutter. Like, I can't throw them away fast enough. And truth be told, is that, like, you don't need 5 mini airplane bottles of booze, a size of samples sent to you every month. Now, do you need do women need tampons sent to them every month? I think
Yeah.
so, right?
Right.
Sure. Okay. I can buy that model. Do you need, do men and women need, razor blades sent at some cadence? Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
there are other options. You could walk into your Walgreens or CVS or, Amazon, but like, look at the things that you have on your subscribe and save on Amazon, which for me is like probably 20 products, right?
Yeah.
Like a bunch of, dog treats and toys and detergents and paper products. And those are the businesses that are better built for subscription. Now, the issue is that most brands do not have the economics and the infrastructure that Amazon has, right?
Right.
It's really, really difficult to ship toilet paper to consumers on a recurrent basis, right? Because
Right.
it's big, it's bulky, it's a low value. So like finding things that you need on a regular cadence that are high AOV, that are higher value, I think that's the key. And unfortunately, there's just not that many options, right? Like a few food of them, or food kits, meal kits have had some staying power. Not most of them, but some of them have. But yeah, it's a tough
It's a
business.
business.
Subscription.
The margins suck. Yeah, no, it's definitely a tough business. All right. You and I connected really. We got to know each other, but we really connected over baseball cards. And by the way, you and I were way ahead of the boom. We were
Yeah.
talking about baseball cards in 2013, okay? A big e-com giant, Fanatics, who is a company that's done extremely well, is now in the baseball card market in a big, big way. Thoughts, and do they succeed or do they fumble?
Yeah, I wish we could have, like, even if we raised like $1 million in 2013 to buy like cards, we would have. I mean, if we hadn't sold anything and just bought, just hand over fist, we would have done exceptionally well. Um, but such is a trend, right? You just don't know. But yeah, I to this day I'm a huge collector. There's actually a big card show in Nashville at the end of this week that I will be exhibiting at. It'll actually be the first time that I'll have a booth
Is
at
it
a
a
show.
Nash Cards? I use Nash Cards. Do you go there? You go to that place?
Yeah, I'm familiar with. Yeah. They're a little outside of town, so it's not super
Okay.
convenient. But yeah, they're at all the shows.
Yeah.
Chris is the owner there. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
good guy. Yeah, they're popular here. But yeah, I'll have a booth at the show this week, so I'm excited
Nice.
about that. But yeah, I mean, there's so much change in the market. Fanatics, as you said, Dan, they've been kind of consolidating and buying up all the smaller players. I think now they own Tops, if I recall.
Yep.
And Panini has basically lost all their exclusive licenses with different sports. So yeah, I mean, Fanatics is becoming kind of the dominant player. And monopolies are, it's a good business if you are the monopoly, but if you're everyone else, there's often challenge there. So far, quality has not taken a back seat, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, there's been so much change. I mean, I was just reading the other day that PSA, the leading card authenticator or grader, which is owned by Collectors Universe,
Yeah.
they just bought or made a bid for SGC, which I think SGC, I was reading, has like 7% of the market. PSA has about 80% of the market. So this is going to move PSA from 80 to 87. We'll see if that gets some antitrust eyes. I mean, I think the market is small enough that it'll probably slide under the radar. I mean, I don't think the Department of Justice is too worried about, the card grading companies, but maybe they are because it sets precedent. But yeah, so much is happening. It really is a shame that if I was, I think I bought my first pack of cards when I was probably 6 or 7. Going to my corner store when I was living up in Toronto and bringing like a dollar, and I was able to get a pack of cards. And now, like,
Forget it.
I mean, you need $400 to get a box of cards, right? I mean, it's
Insane.
just nuts, right? And
Yeah.
you need to be wealthy to get in the business. And I realize I'm part of the problem because I'm kind of endorsing the hobby, and I do have a lot of cards and a lot of modern stuff. But as I've been going through my collection the last couple of weeks, preparing for the show this weekend, I'm like, man, I got a lot of like older stuff too, which is like I'd much rather add to my Mickey Mantle collection than my, just trying to speculate on like which Luka Doncic
Doncic,
card,
yeah,
or
he's the
which.
poster boy for this stuff.
Yeah, I
The
mean, I
modern
was
wave.
reading. Yeah, I mean, I was reading that like Luka's got like it was like 10,000 cards. There's like 10,000 unique Luka Doncic cards
Yeah,
on the
man. I
market.
mean,
They ain't making any more Mickey Mantle cards, right? Like,
agree with you 100%. At this point, I only buy vintage. And it's also what I like. You know what I mean? I like when people go, "Oh, what should I buy?" I go, "Look, buy the guys you like." I like Roberto Clemente, a little bit of Hank Aaron, that kind of stuff. And like, and that's it.
yeah,
That's where I'm at.
exactly.
All
Yeah.
right, I can't let you go without you and I are man crush on Warren Buffett, but his right-hand man, Charlie Munger, died. I look in your office right now on the video, and right behind you, you have a picture of Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger. What did he mean? For those who know Warren, but don't know Charlie as much, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Charlie was the one. Berkshire Hathaway just came out with their annual report a few days ago. I think it was last Saturday. I guess a week ago Saturday, and Warren has kind of a letter that's become famous over the years. It's certainly worth a read. And the first couple pages of the letter this year was kind of like almost like an obituary to Charlie. So you should certainly read it. Also, if you go to berkshirehathaway.com, their website, I think it's just an amazing website because it is honestly the worst website you will ever
Low
see.
tech. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it just looks. You're like, really?
From
Like, did my
1997.
browser stop running? Right? Like,
Yeah.
did something break?
Yeah.
For like a $500 billion business or whatever they are. But anyways, your question, Dan. Yeah, I mean, Warren always acknowledges Charlie as really the brains behind the business, but Warren was kind of like the face of the business, the voice of the business. He's the one who you most associate with Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah.
He's the one that has always been kind of my idol. But if your idol is saying that someone else is their idol, then that person is probably one that you should be looking up to more.
Yeah.
And for Warren, that was Charlie Munger and others as well, but certainly Charlie. And yeah, I mean, I've been to the annual shareholders event probably a dozen times over the years, and Charlie was just always like very quick-witted. If he had something to say, he would say it and not hold back, and if he didn't have anything to say, he would just move on to the next question, right? He's not there just to talk. So very, very thoughtful with his words.
There's a book, the Charlie Munger, but the Tao of Charlie Munger or something like that. I got it on
Right.
my Amazon wish list. I'm definitely gonna listen to that one. Matt, where do people find out about you, folks? If you're listening, there isn't anyone in the fulfillment logistics space that knows more than this guy. I recommend him to people. I used to be in this vertical, not anymore, but usually when I get a lead or people with questions or concerns and saying, "What the hell do I do?" I direct them right to Matt. Matt, where can people find out about you?
I'm very active on Twitter, on LinkedIn. I think Twitter,
You are.
my handle is Matt A. Hertz. LinkedIn, you can find me under my name, Matthew Hertz. Email, text, I don't know, all that stuff. I'm sure Dan, you'll share more of that info. But yeah,
I'll share in the show notes.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, always happy to chat and engage with any listeners and friends of Dan's.
Good stuff.